Christiaan is a security consultant, ethical hacker, and trainer with 10 ICT. He's previously spoken at Blackhat EU, IT Underground, and Swiss Cyberstorm. So, Christiaan?
Thank you. Well, thank you. I even talked and I already got the applause. So welcome everybody to this talk about virtual forensics. I did this talk as well at Blackhat EU in Barcelona this year, but there's some new stuff in it, so I updated some slides and some new investigations results, so I hope it will be interesting for you. So this is the agenda for today. Who am I? I will shortly introduce myself a little bit more. Then we will discuss about traditional vs virtual forensics, the challenges we face in real time, with a mentioning about Citrix and VMware, Windows 7, and a summary, and I will give some opportunity for questions. So you might have noticed, but I'm from the Netherlands. So yesterday I traveled about 24 hours to get here, so I have a little bit of jet lag. We have the greatest soccer fans in the world. I asked her to join me, but she refused. And I warn you, if you have any comments on my talk, we know how to kick. So this is where I started. When I was 12, the Commodore 64 and Amiga. Then I joined with Silicon Graphics, and well, that's where I started and got the virus about computers and forensics and hacking. So then we have a duty in the Netherlands, so I joined the Navy for a couple of years. On the right side, I joined the boarding team as well. I fight against drugs in the Caribbean area. So yeah, it's quite fun. And then I was at a point, what should I do? I've been studying theology as well. And I was interested in computers and security. And so I decided to go for the security job. And meanwhile, in my free time, my wife and I take care for homeless people and foster children, so that's a little bit what we do. And this is my biggest hobby. I like to play with synthesizers. Really the old ones, but they're quite expensive, so now I'm using the digital ones, but I hope one of a time to have some real ARPs and that kind of stuff. And Moog, if you know what I'm talking about. So the session is not about a negative talk about virtualization. Recent results show that about 60% of the Dutch companies have already virtualization in their company. Mostly VMware, ESX, Citrix. So yeah, we have to face it. It's real and we are facing it during investigations as well. So we have to learn about it. I'm not sponsored by any of the vendors, especially Microsoft. I have to give my talk to them before I would speak about it because they were very afraid that I would disclose some things. And actually I do one, but they agreed I could mention it. So. And I'm not talking about using a virtual machine as a forensic research platform. I see a lot of malware analysts, they are using VMware Workstation to build a Windows XP environment to test their malware, for example. But that's this talk not about. Okay, this is yes, this is no. All right. Traditional vs virtual forensics. In a traditional way, forensic researchers were used to go to a company, acquire a computer, a laptop, get the disk out, make a nice copy of it, write protection, and well, that's it. You know exactly where the data is, or you have it physically in your hand. And the problem nowadays is that companies have large storage areas, storage networks, virtual environments, VDIs, and yeah, we're facing problems. Have you ever been to this? If you're going to an acquiring of data and you walk into that company and you see a lot of, well, storage areas like this and you're just wondering, okay, which disk do I need to have, or otherwise, where's my data? So what are the challenges, I believe, is what to expect. If you're at a site, if your kit with you with all the stuff, the right protection devices, your laptops, all kind of data stuff, what to face if you have a really large VMware farm, for example. Which tools can you use? Because what's very important is for forensic research is that the tools you use, you can prove what you have done. that your audit trail, your forensic process is real and you can explain what you've done to the judge. But not all tools which you use normally in, I say, normal digital forensics, you can use in virtual forensics. An example for is NCase. If you are doing a VMDK research, well, NCase will show some results, but it doesn't work because the code, the source code of VMDK file format is closed. And I talked to the guys from Guidance this morning as well, from what are you doing about it? And they said, well, yeah, we have problems with the guys from VMware that they didn't want to disclose their code. So you have to work around. I will show you later on and tell you later on what kind of techniques I use there for. Where is the data? Where is it hosted? Who owns the data? Very important. For example, Dutch law is you need to own the data and you need to own the machines before we can acquire the data. So that's, I don't know how it is in the US, but for us, is that the law? Which forensic techniques can you use? Can we use traditional forensic techniques, or can you also use new things like carving, data carving, or memory forensics on virtual forensics? So, and what about jurisdiction? I will give you some examples. So what must be acquired? I don't know if you just recognize this, but I've had a case once when we were there at a location. It was a huge farm of data, and the local Department of Justice representative said, well, I want everything to be taken away. I'm just like, oh my God. But it's VMware. I don't care, I want to see disks. So we ended up with a truckload of computers and servers, and well, actually that company couldn't work for a month. So you can imagine how the impact is for the business. So, and where is my data? This is a statement of the Microsoft director of the Netherlands, stating about Azure. Yeah, you know the new virtualization platform of Microsoft that although you ask, I want only the data to be stored in my own country, for example in the Netherlands, actually they make one copy for the Netherlands, one copy is going to Ireland, and another copy of the data is in India or maybe in the US. So yeah, that's really a problem. I think we should really focus on that one as well. So where is my evidence? One of the latest developments of Joanna Rutkowska, and I don't know if you know her, she's very good about virtualizations. She wrote about the blue pill, red pill, about hypervisor security. And actually she is developing now, with some other researcher, I forgot the name, but a new Cubes OS. It's a virtualization platform. And actually what you see in that OS, you have for every function, for example, an office function, you have your own virtual machine. So if you're processing a Word or file or an Excel, you got an Office VM. For example, if you're going for internet, you have an internet VM. So it's a very safe way. They try to make a kind of sandbox technique to protect your computer. But what if you want to gather evidence, for example? So that's really going to be a problem. Portable VMs. I don't know if anyone has ever worked with these ones or seen these ones. Just your USB stick and your VM is on it. And every data is in that VM. If it's written or file protected, you can't open it. You can't get any data out of it. So you have really a problem. So we really have to understand how these techniques work and what is the latest technique and what can we face. VDIs, the latest trend we see in the Netherlands. Desktops out of the wallet and desktop hosted in the cloud. But if you have an incident, okay, who owns the data? It's the cloud company. And which OS or which VM do you need? I don't know. That's really difficult. That's really what we need to understand. And that's why I'm very pleased to give this talk. It's not only to show what I'm researching at, but also for the community to give a shout and to call for please help, and together we can focus this problem and work on it. What about jurisdiction? That is an example. Someone was gathering child porn, using different cloud resources. to put on his data. You have several jurisdictional precincts. So how do you get the evidence? Do you know your limits? Who you're going to contact? So what we really need is to understand the technology. I really need to understand the implementations of the products, how it's implemented, and where you can find the data, which is valuable for your research, which files are interesting, which tools can we use, and well, how those tools are acting in the virtual environment. And really, can you explain the working of your tool in the court? Once I was in a court, it was really great. I was doing a contra research, and one of the experts was asked, can you explain about MD5 sum? And the guy went up to the board and just wrote down the complete mathematical formula, and the judge was just like, okay, I believe you understand the material. But how many of the forensic researchers you face in court are just the tool guys? They know how the tool works. But the deeper levels of OS or the file system, they can't explain to you. And if you can't explain about file systems, how do you think you're going to explain about virtual forensics, about virtual file systems? And we need to develop an approach. I don't know if the people are here, but recently Singres has released a book about forensic research in the cloud environment or virtual environment. And I've read the book, and it's a nice overview, but it didn't give the hints for how to research. If you're in law enforcement, what we need, what we do face, it doesn't tell you about it. So it was a good initiative, but I think it has to go further. It must go further. So which decisions? Well, in the past, we always pulled the plug from a machine. Just pull out the plug, get out the disk, copy it, take it to your lab, research it. But I think if you're now visiting a company and you're doing pull the plug of a VMware server, I don't think you're going to be happy. And in the meantime, there are a lot of live forensics techniques which have developed. For example, memory forensics, file carving. There's so much valuable data in the live environment, which processes are running in memory. But how are you getting those out of the virtual memory? So the next part of my demo and presentation will be about Citrix, VMware, and Windows 7. Which files are interesting for use, which tools can you use for it, and what are the hiccups, and what we need for the future. So Citrix, well, I think everyone knows Citrix, and there are many ways to implement it. But I know in a couple of years ago, when someone told me you have to do an investigation and that company has a Citrix environment, I would just like, oh no. Because I knew, only the system profile, the registry, maybe some log files, that's it. I couldn't copy a disk or something like that. So you really have to imagine, if you have a suspect, for example, in this case, a suspect has a mobile phone nowadays. Was it a Dutch kick? A laptop, the internet, of course, the firewall with the logs. So you really have to understand how the suspect connects to the network, for example. And then you can get more and more logs. You have then the Citrix profile, but you can have the internet logs from your firewall. What time does it connect? The Citrix Access Gateway with its logging, RSA, the Citrix farm, the desktop. And actually, if someone is using a thin client, for example, to connect to his Citrix environment, I always make a copy of the thin client as well, just to be sure. You can better be sure to copy more data, then you have to go back. Often you don't have that chance. So what are the interesting files for Citrix? The last logon file, for example. Yes, update ICA client. Configuration log. By default, it's not enabled. Of course, the user profile. I think the enter-user dot, well, it's the most valuable file you ever have. And although the latest Internet Explorer and the Google browsers make it difficult for us, there are still tools and still ways to get data out of it. Citrix Access Gateway logs. it's really nice. If you have those and you have the radius logs and the time the NTP service is running correctly in that company, you can really create a great timeline. And that's one of the first things I always create. After I've done the checksums, for example, I always create a timeline for my data. It tells you so much. But then again, in virtual environments, I hope that the timeline will be representative, so that the NTP is running correctly. So which tools can you use for Citrix? Well, actually the normal tools like FTK Imager, Ncase, and the University of Fairbanks in, I think it's Alaska, they have developed VIX tools. They didn't have released it yet, but it's looking very promising. They've released a kind of tool set which freezes actually a Citrix Xen server. So you can give your commands to copy data out of the server while it's running live without actually changing the environment. Because everyone knows if you change your evidence, forget it. Once wasted, always wasted. Well, VMware, that's what I'm talking about. Well, Workstation, ESX Server, I think everyone has worked with it already. Especially VM Workstation is quite valuable. And if it's static or live forensics, we need different tools and we need a different approach. And many use the VM Workstation actually as a testing platform. Well, and what we see now in real life is that suspect is building up a VM machine in Workstation, for example, performing his crimes, then deletes the VM. And I have an example. Sometimes I'm asked to do some cyber crime research and also on terrorism. And this is a cyber jihad site. And this site is actually used, this forum, for spreading movies about kills of US soldiers or other acts of the digital mujahideen, and to spread it out, to recruit new young people for their battle. And what they actually do is they make movies of it, and they transform it in various formats, so it can be spread easily. They use sites like RapidShare or that kind of stuff, but the formats are so small they can spread it out with mobile cell phones as well, because that's very popular and not monitored by the secret agencies. And what we here see is on the last, I think, on the page, VMware Workstation, the latest version, before Altos, only and exclusive terrorists. But if you look in that link and you have going reading through the manual, you'll read that they're actually describing how to set up a VM workstation, how to set up a VM, which tools you need to convert the various video formats, how to upload them to different sites, and afterwards how they have to secretly and securely delete and wipe that VM, so that every trace of their laptop is disappearing. This is really scary. We know that the terrorists are using steganography, although I hate this word. But we see that they're using more and more over the latest techniques. What about this thing? I don't know if anyone recognizes this one. It's very helpful. It's the portable virtual private machine. It's very small. You can run it from a USB stick. And you can set up encrypted tunnels everywhere in the world, over the internet. And when you're finished, well, you plug out USB stick. No one cares about it. So what are the files of interest if you're looking for VMware? What I did, I've written a little small script in Ncase to detect these files out of an image. So VMX, VMSD, VMTM, VMDK, of course, the log, swap file, snapshot files that could be very interesting if you want to reconstruct some things which have happened, and a vmem, virtual memory paging file. So what are the tools you can use? Of course, FTK Imager as well. LiveView. LiveView is a tool you can actually reconstruct or boot up the VMDK. So you can see actually if you copied the VMDK, you install LiveView, import the VMDK file, and you boot up actually the OS as it originally was. So you can live investigate that environment. Well, in case I told you before, it is limited. You will get some errors. During one of my lab setups, I noticed that VMDK didn't work quite well in Ncase, so I converted it to a DD file. But I suddenly lost some of my files. And I tried to reconstruct it again, so okay, another time converting again the VMDK file, and I got the same error. And I asked the guys from guidance about it, and well, they couldn't reconstruct either. So you see, well, losing files in your investigation is killing. So Ncase is not always working for VMware files. Well, MMLS and DD, well, normal tools. Raw to a VMDK. So actually, you can reconstruct a DD file to a VMDK file format and then open it in LiveView. So you can open up the OS. Well, I mount and carve it for most of PhotoRec. So I love to do carving. It's one of my favorite research items in my investigations because it always gives you extra data. And this is what I tried to mention earlier before. We need each other in the community. And we're looking for tools for investigation about virtual forensics. And there are not many of them. And actually, this tool, it's Compare Snapshots, it's a tool by Zyron. Actually, I found it in an anti-malware forum. Someone was investigating malware, and he did something with the VMware Workstation, built up the environment, made a snapshot, infected his computer, made another snapshot, and he wrote a tool to compare the snapshots. So this is really great if you have reconstructed out of your image a couple of snapshots. You can compare them. I once did this one for someone who had a child born on his laptop. And I don't know how it's here in the US, but a lot of people we have in the Netherlands, which are spreading a child porn, they infect on purposely their machines with malware to say, hey, the malware did it. So yeah, it's up to us then to prove that's not the malware, but they actually by themselves are downloading the stuff. So this is one of the tools I've used. At the end of my talk, I will give you the link to my site. There's a paper about this presentation. It's not on your CD-ROM, but in that paper there are also the links for the tools I'm mentioning. Well, if you have the vmem file, a great tool is memparser by Chris Betts. You can use it in your normal forensic research, but if you have the vmem file, well, actually you can use it for your research as well. With memparser, sorry, you can use it as well. In this example, you see evil bird notepad with .exe, a piece of malware I found in the memory running. And this is another great tool. I recently discovered this one, and I'm testing with it. It's OpenVMS drivers. It's actually Java written, and well, you can do a lot of it. For example, if you see the command line on top of my slide, you see, well, I'm mounting a VM file system, which is a DD. And just by putting the info, it shows you all the information about the image. But on the bottom of my slide, you see VMDK, VMSN, metadata, or log files. Actually, you can, with file copy or path or size position, you can, with, for example, a file copy or a path, you can see where the files in the VMDK are structured. And actually you can restore them. So it's a really great tool for restoring data out of your VMDK. And I wrote a small script. If I restore it, it goes through an MD5 checksum or a SHA-1 checksum. So that's easy. Windows 7. Who is using Windows 7 here? Can I see some hands? A lot of them. And who is using the XP mode? XP mode, the exploit mode. They didn't allow me yet to tell. Well, in Vista already, you saw that VHD file format was included in the system. So you see the operating system with a virtual component in it. So you can mount your VHD files. You can do it read-only mount then. You also can boot from a VHD file, and actually the system backup is made in VHD format. And there are currently a lot of tools around in which you can mount VHD, and I will show you later on a small demo about it, how to mount it and how to carve, for example, data out of it. So it's really easy. And VHD is so structured that you can use it in Ncase, and you can also use it in FTK as well. For example, here I've mounted a VHD file with FTK, and on the left side it's a bit small, but I think you can see it. You see actually the structure of my disk, and you can get the data out of it. So that's really nice. So I'll show you a little demo. So I've made a little test image, and I say it's already mounted. So then I mount. It's a tool called Gizmo. So I said mount image, and I said, of course, because we are forensics, read only. Drive letter. And I said okay. Yep. So. So normally I use other tools, but to do one quickly, I grabbed recover my files, carver, recover a drive, and I said this one, automatic drive recovery, start, and you see that it's searching on my VHD file for deleted or lost files. There's one thing about recover my files. It will show now the actual file names on the left side. And later on, when it's finished, it says something like reconstructed files. So the original file name is disappeared. So that's terrible. But so you see here on the left side here. So you see it's quite fast. Normally I would use PhotoRec. It's a great tool for carving data. So it's almost there. It's completed. You see over here, you see some pictures I got out of my file. Nothing interesting. I was last year in Senegal, so you see the pictures here. Bruce Snyder. So you can see, actually, mounting VHD with some data carving, it's quite easy. Then my favorite topic, the exploit mode. Well, XP mode is used for old applications. Actually, what it does, if you say, okay, I want to use XP mode, it grabs a piece of your hard disk, installation of virtual PC, installation of Windows XP Service Pack 3, and actually when you install an application in the XP mode, it publishes in your Windows 7. But there's one thing I discovered. The moment you choose for installing Windows XP mode, it grabs a piece of your hard disks, but it doesn't reformat it. So if you have if you're acquiring a computer, for example, with XP mode, please, the VHD file, carve it, because there could be very useful information in it. I've told Microsoft about it, that it would be more nice to format or wipe the file before installing the XP Service Pack 3 in it, but maybe in the next Service Pack. And one of the other things is that automatic updates or the firewall in Windows XP is not enabled. And underwater, everything is shared with Windows 7 at a system level. So that's why I call it exploit mode, because if you're capable of writing some piece of malware that's discovering, hey, it's running XP mode, and you are able to publish a keylogger, for example, in the XP, then you're there. So it could be a nice attack vector, but I've mentioned this to Microsoft, and I hope they will pick up this one as well. So what are the files of interest? VHD, of course. The VMC, that's the configuration file, tells you more about which disks are in the machine, the network. The save state file, you can compare it with a snapshot of VMware file. And a VUD, the undo disk, a kind of restore function. And the default location you see on the bottom of my slide. That's mostly where it's situated. You can read it also in my paper as well. So how do you know if VHD has been used? It's enabled, and you have to investigate the VMC file. And you will see that there's some code there, 185631032299. Well, I've noticed that, okay, 2010 is the year, but the rest of the code, well, I'm simply not know what it actually means. It has something to do with the date and time, but I've asked Microsoft about it. What does it mean? Because every time you generate a VHD file, it gives you this kind of type of code, but I can't explain yet. So that's one of the things I'm working at, but I'm not completely aware of it. So if anyone knows the answer for me today, I would be very, very happy. So a little summary of my talk. Yeah, virtualized environments can make forensic research a really tough job. And virtualization of host applications, it will scatter the evidence. And on purposely, I mentioned only the word cloud once in my talk. But you can imagine, if we're talking about the cloud, and I used the example from the child porn, spreading about different platforms, for example, Azure or from Amazon, you really have a challenge. And to understand every time the rapidly changing technique is difficult, especially for law enforcement, because we have so many cases. You don't have one case at a time, normally 6 or 7. And every time you have to go to a new location and to acquire data, you're faced with another kind of challenge. Then it's VMware, but how is it configured? So it's quite a challenge, and actually I think for myself it's very difficult to cope with this. For every time investigate, put time in it to research it. How does it work? Can I reconstruct? That's a lot for taking time from your investigation, because you have to explain it in court as well. So for the future, I really believe we need more research on VM. There was one of the guys, I forgot his name, but maybe he's here in the audience as well. He wrote me about about this presentation, and he said, well, keep on, spread this word, because I think we really underestimate this in our research, and we need to publish about it. And we really need forensic proof tools for our research. Without tools, we can't cope with this. And well, this was my slide in Barcelona. Would it be a nice next topic for Blackhat? And well, a few weeks ago they called me just like, hey, would you like to speak on in Las Vegas? I said, yes, of course. Just to spread the word. And what I mentioned before, the books I've seen now about forensic research and virtualization environments, they're good. They're a good start. But I think we really need a book about which tools can we use, how to investigate. So, well, actually, I'm trying to write one, but if someone is interested to help me out, well, it would be great. So I will now reserve some time for questions and have just a water.
So a lot of the materials or the tools that we saw here apply to some of the most common VM vendors, VMware, some of the things on Windows 7. What can you share about some of the other players that are coming in, like such as Citrix, Sense Server?
Well, actually, when you look at for tools for investigating, well, actually VMware, they have some tools, but they're not focused on research or like this one. They're not focused on that one. So a lot of the tools you see is actually written by just guys like working in the law enforcement or facing the problem, and they write them by themselves. So there was a question up there, I think.
Christiaan, have you had anybody challenge the forensic validity of an image that's been brought up in a machine other than the one that was created on?
Well, actually, I've heard a case about in the Netherlands that the judge said, like, okay, it's a copy of a virtual machine, just like you mentioned earlier before. It is copied, so I accept it as an evidence, but it was not right protected copied. So I think we also have to, show the judge, for example, how you can prove or that it's really evidence. But it's difficult to prove with the current tools. It's really difficult. For me, I work the most with the checksums. That's the thing I have, and the thing I have to use, and to have to wait till there's better.
How about the use of snapshots in case of forensic investigations? First question. And second question, does it make sense to make snapshots instead of a DD image, for example?
It depends on your case. For example, if you have snapshots, I use them for reconstruction. But if you have, for example, a DD, what you're mentioning, you can open it in live view, and then you can make snapshots, for example, to investigate the OS. But to say from okay, which is best, it depends on your research, on your case.
And
for evidence at the court, it's really important that you can explain what a DD is or what a snapshot is. If you can explain that one and the difference, and you can say why you used it, then it's okay. With checksums on that. Yeah.
You mentioned that the system backup format was VHD. Does that also apply to the volume shadow copies?
I'm not sure about that one. Not sure. Anyone else? Questions?
I'll speak loud. If somebody deleted a BMDK or a BMAP file, do they have decent signatures? You can be a card for them?
Yeah, sure.
They do?
Yeah. If you have not PhotoTrack, but the other one which I mentioned, you can actually make a custom signature and get them out. Some more questions? Okay, well then I would like to thank you for being here. If you want some more information, or this is my email address. I'm on Twitter and I also have my own blog, so it would be nice to have a word with you. Okay. Cheers.